there with our Savior we'll be forever, where no more sorrow can dismay, and there'll be no tears in heaven there, no tears up there, sorrows and pain will all have flown, no tears in heaven there, no tears up there, no tears in heaven will be known.
Merciful Father in heaven, we come bow before your throne of grace, thanking you, Father, for bringing us here safe this morning, Father, consider another portion of your holy and divine word. We pray, Father, as we go into our study today, we have our mind geared toward, Father, learning more and more about you and your word, Father, that we can be more and more like you. Pray, Father, that you will be Brother Brown as he comes forth to conduct the class this morning. Bring to his mind, Father, all his study concerning this lesson this morning. He presented in a way that we will understand him. We pray, Father, that you go as we look forward to Brother Kid and our devotion this morning. Just be with us and bless us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Some morning yonder we'll cease to ponder, oh, things this life has brought to thee. All will be clearer, save one be dearer, in heaven where all will be made new, and there'll be no tears in heaven there, no tears up there, sorrow and pain will all have flown, and there'll be no tears in heaven there, no tears up there, no tears in heaven will be known.
Amen. Good morning. And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. So happy to see all of you out this morning. And God has blessed us to once again be assembled here in the house of the Lord with another opportunity to study a portion of his holy and divine word. And as always, it's indeed our prayer that hopefully something is said this morning that you find to be beneficial and thereby be able to apply it to your life and be a better person, a better Christian in the future. Certainly our heart continually goes out to all those that are mourning the loss of their loved ones, those that are sick and shut in, and those that are going through various medical procedures. And so we want to continue to remember them in our prayers. We want to play for Sister Chancey Pettiford. She was recently put back in the hospital, so we want to certainly pray for her, as well as Sister Beverly Jenkins, Sister Dansby, and Brother Travis Kidd. We want to continue to pray for them that they all have a speedy recovery. And there are others that are listed in our bulletin. We certainly want to remember all of them in our prayers. And I'm certain that if you have opportunity throughout the week to go by and visit with any of them, they'd be more than happy to hear any words of encouragement that you may have. And once again, I want to extend a very strong, or if you will, welcome or happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are here. And I would just say, if you're blessed to still have your mom, you ought to make it your business to at least give them a hug and a kiss and let them know how much you love them. I just don't know what I would do to be able to say Happy Mother's Day to my mother once more. And so you ought to treasure them while you have them. Now, we're going to get into our lesson, and this is our series of Living Life That Matters. The subject today is what? Living virtuously. Psalms 1. We're going to be looking at all those scriptures in just a moment. But our key verse today is Psalms 1 and 2. It says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night." Again, that's Psalms 1, verses 1 and verses 2. Now, if you permit me this morning, just for a little bit, I want to have a little fun. And I hope, and I'm going to get you to, and we're going to get into the lesson, we're going to get serious, but I just want to have just a little fun. And so this morning, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I'm going to ask you to dream just a little bit. I'm going to ask you to dream, and I just want you to imagine. Don't you get your imaginary things working in your mind. And I want you to imagine this morning that you just received from some unknown person with no strings attached $1 billion. You just got $1 billion, right? And you didn't play the lottery. Somebody just gave it to you, and there's no strings attached. But it gets better because this $1 billion is tax-free. So you don't even have to pay taxes on this $1 billion. So I want you to get your creative juices to me. And I know it's difficult for some of you to get here, but just go ahead, just play along with me this morning, just for a little bit, and I'm going somewhere with this. And so if you just imagine this $1 billion that is tax-free, it makes it even better because it just gets better. Your family are billionaires. So you don't got to worry about your family calling you up, asking you for nothing. Nobody bothering you and your family. So all the people in your family, not all the people, but your brothers and sisters, let me leave it to that. Your brothers and sisters, they all are billionaires. And just when you thought it couldn't get no better, right? Are y'all imagining, are y'all with me now? Are you seeing, are you working with those $1 billion? You working with me? You think about what you're going to do with the $1 billion? Are you working with it? Just as you thought it wouldn't get any better, guess what, y'all? That $1 billion, it earns your investments, earn you $100 million a year. So you never run out of money. You got all the money that you could have, that you ever could need. Are you imagining with me now? Are y'all thinking about what life would be like if you had that kind of money? If you had that kind of stuff, are you just even imagining? Okay? So if you can imagine that, then I'm going to ask you a question. If you got your creative juices going, huh? I'm going to ask you a question. How would you act? It's not a rhetorical question. I need to know, how would you act? You a billionaire. Your folks in your family got billions. You can get $100 million a year on your investment. How would you act? What would you be like? Your imagination ain't working very good. I hear you, but I know this is in the Bible school class, and what she said is perfectly fine. Let me come back. But now, I don't want you to just give me the Christian answer. I ain't said it was a Christian answer. But I know a lot of people here, y'all get in mind, because I'm trying to get a perspective here. I want you to get a perspective here. Yes, sir.
Sometimes it's not always about us if you have that amount or that enormity of wealth, because it's not you that necessarily has to change, it's the people around you.
So hold on, see, because you did come in on the tail end of that. And so let me help you, what I'm trying to get us to do right now. Okay, I'm saying, now, and he's right, but I'm saying you, Kevin Wilson, just found out that some benefactor gave you $1 million, $1 billion, tax-free, right? And your family got $1 billion. So they not harassing you for money, right? And your billion is going to win, like you said, $100 million. And so what I want to know is, then if you're using your imagination, or your imagination, I should say, how would you act? How would you act? Not Warren Buffett, not those other billionaires, not how would you act? Coming from where you are now, how would you act? You give some of your money to charity. So you become what? More generous, right? Right? Oh, wonderful. You're going to donate to the Shrine Hospital. So we're going to start doing some donations. That's wonderful. I got you. I'm not saying, you see, okay. Oh, I don't know why y'all want to let y'all imagination go. But let me ask you this. All right, let me go. Let me get you. Because I know it's hard for y'all to imagine that you're going to have $1 billion. And I know that was extravagant. I probably should have came back to some more originally. But I would suggest to you that if you got $1 billion, number one, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to start looking a little bit differently. You're going to feel better. And because guess what? The money you give now, just think how much more you're going to be able to give. A few people we may help now, just think how many more people you're going to be able to help. Huh? And then like he just said, you have so much money, there ain't nothing that you would want, if you would want something. See, now again, and I'm not trying to be, when I say this, I'm not trying to, how can I say this without offending anyone? Because I know you have to be careful about offending people today. What I'm saying is, there are some things that I would probably get that I don't have now, because I know that's cost way too much. But if you had more money and you had all that money, it wasn't nothing that you could ever want that you couldn't get. Anything that money could buy, you would have it. Right? Let me give you an example. For me, there's a golf course that they say, I don't care how much money you got, you can't play at because it's only for members and their guests. And I don't know any of the members, so I can't be a guest. But if I had that kind of money, I'd buy the golf course. Right? So, and I know y'all haven't struggled with this, because I'm going to go ahead and go so you can see where I'm going with this. Because again, I want you to imagine this. I want you to be thinking about it. And so now, imagine you're a child of God. Imagine you Job, before Job went through all the troubles that we read about. How did you think when Job entered the room? You see, the thing about being a billionaire, when you walk in the room, guess what happens? You get noticed. Guess what happened? When you speak and you say something, he just told you what Warren Buffett said. He didn't quote Henry Brown. People listen to what you got to say. Right? Did you think they listened to Job? Why did they listen to Job? Gary, you got your hand up. I'm not talking about his critics. I'm talking about I'm talking about before Job got sick, before all those bad things happened to him. Why did people listen to Job, Miriam?
Because they figured he was wealthy. He was an honorable man in their sight, and what he said mattered.
What he said mattered. Give it. Because Job could help him, right? He could help him. Why Job could help him? Because Job had been blessed. And not only had he been blessed, but you could see Job's blessings. And Job looked like he was blessed. He walked like he was blessed. He talked like he was blessed. He acted like, he smiled like he was blessed. His life showed his blessing. Right? Because he was a child of God. He was a billionaire. He was like that tree there that's planted by the water. Now, what about that tree that's planted by the water? It gets its nutrition from the water. It never dries up as long as the water is flowing. its roots goes deep in the ground. I'm getting a little bit ahead of it, but I want you to see that. And so this is why I don't want you to see that. Now notice something. If you go there and read Acts the 4th chapter, in verses 13, and you see over there it talks about Peter and I think James. And it says these men, they had noted that these men was unlearned and uneducated. But they noticed something about them. And so they said they must have Jesus. And so I'm asking you this morning, what is it about us that when we walk out and we walk around other folks, that they look at us? What they see in us. Do they see us? Do they recognize us as being children of God? Now, I don't know Warren Buffett's kids. See, Kevin brought his name up. But I imagine that if they showed up around here somewhere, because of the money they got, somehow it wouldn't take long before we'll know it. Now, I'm going to bring it a little bit closer to you all, and I see your hand, Gary, but let me say this. The other day, now and I'm not because of any reason, I just didn't, but the other day, and I just heard about it. That's why I'm finna tell you about it. They said the young man they called 50 Cent came to Shreveport, and the mayor rolled out the carpet, and the mayor had a key to the city, and it was a lot of us that showed up down there to be in the presence of 50 Cent. And that's what I think they said, right? 50 Cent. Why? Why we show up down there? Because somebody thinking 50 Cent can help. Somebody, right? Henry Brown used to work downtown. He would drive down there all the time. Man, he ain't gave me no key. And ain't no crowd showed up. I'm going to come back to you, Sister Gary. Okay. I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am. Make you feel better, right? Well, and it's because we look at them as being this river. We see them as this river. We see them as being blessed. I know, however, we see them as being blessed with having what they have. And we want some of that. And so what I'm suggesting to us as Christians, that is sometimes we need to show people that we are blessed. It ought to be evident, if nothing but in our smile. It ought to be evident. And I want you to know, and I hear this, but what I'm saying to you, I know you say, well, I got all this stuff going on inside. But you know something? No matter what's going on inside, it's eventually going to show on the outside. Now, you can be sick, and you don't know it. Nobody don't know it. But it's you sick, that sickness is on the inside. But pretty soon, if you stay sick long enough, something's going to show that you're sick on the outside. How you know that, Brother Brown? Because I see sick people. And I want to say you something else, Christians, that when we're sin sick, you might can hide the sickness, but pretty soon, we're going to get on into this lesson.
You mentioned something really, I think it's really important in showing and displaying and allowing the life of Christ to be manifested in us. We often talk about planting seeds of the gospel. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. And it came to mind, Brother Danzy mentioned Sister Danzy was feeling better because she invited someone out to church.
It's so true, and we're gonna get. You're right. We're gonna get a little bit more to it. But since you're already there, I got to come and say this, because you look at that tree up there, and I picked that tree. Now this is not a cypress tree, but you got some cypress trees. The reason I picked the cypress tree is because a lot of the pictures I saw from the cypress tree, they had a price with it. They didn't want me to. I couldn't just cop and put them on there. But if you go and you look at the cypress tree, one of the things about the cypress tree that's round about the swamp is they show you because they grow and they send out a lot of roots, right? And not only that, but the fruit that they bear, they spread that fruit all around them so that you begin to see a lot of other cypress trees. Let me say that one more time, because I wouldn't be. But that fruit that they bear, they spread around, right? Now, when the cypress trees die, you know what happens? Generally what happens a lot of times, the water has dried up or something has infected it. But when it dries up, it no longer bears any fruit. And pretty soon, it'll fall over. Keep that in mind as we go through this lesson. But I love how the author used that about the cypress. But let's look at what the author said, what he says there. Let's read these scriptures and see what David, or the writer here, was saying. He says, blessed is the man. Underline there, blessed, who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scorners. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. And all he does, he prospers. Now, because y'all, let me stop right here because I want to bag up one of the things that y'all didn't play the game with me so much because I know y'all was kind of nervous and y'all didn't trust me. And so y'all wouldn't let your imaginations run wild. Y'all thought I was going to use it against you. But I just want you to, just for a minute, imagine that we all was very faithful Christians. And imagine what the worship service would be like this morning. Just imagine how we would sing praises to God. Imagine how we would pray to him if we all were faithful Christians. Now, I know each and every one of you are faithful Christians. It's the other of those of us who are not that gives the problem. I get that. But I want you to forget about judging the rest of us today. And I just want you to use that your imagination run wild. Imagine what this community would look like if it was full of faithful Christians. Imagine what kind of city we would live in if we had all Christians. Just imagine. And then imagine if it all happened because of you. Because of the life that you were living. You see, we were talking about a life that matters, or living a life that matters. And then you can see where the author is going here when he says this. And then we're going to read on. But I want y'all to keep it in mind. We're going to come back to some of this. But he says, the wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of righteousness, but the way of the wicked will perish. And so here we see this psalmist is starting off, and he's saying with us some very interesting things here. And so, again, our subject today is trying to live what? Virtuously. Now, so to live virtuously, it says that we have to be living by what? Some high moral standards. Living virtuously. High moral standards. Let that sink in just a little bit. The psalmist says that a virtuous man is like a tree firmly planted by streams of water. Virtuous people stand for something. They continue to grow because they are being nourished by the word of the God. Something I didn't point out about that cypress tree. You notice what he just said? A cypress tree grows and it continues to grow. And so I had to ask myself, am I still growing? And if I'm not growing, what is the problem? Keep that in mind when we come back. I want you to think about that for a bit, and we're going to talk about these things as we read. Stay on this slide for just a little bit. They do not fall down when the storm comes because they are firmly planted. Whatever they do prospers. Whatever they do prospers. Whatever they do prospers. One more time. Whatever they do prospers. Virtuous people live lives that matter because they plant themselves in the right place. Psalmist 1 is a plea for a deeper, more solid, and more productive walk with God. The person who has a close walk with God is called blessed. Psalm 1 offers us an understanding of a life that matters, that differs enormously from the way these things are usually understood in the world today. It turns the common perception of reality on its head and suggests a life of blessing that is so radical that it is remarkably appealing. So how do we live virtuously? So now the author says several things that should really be of significance to us, that makes us, number one, think, and then number two, make some assessment of ourselves, and then wonder, are we planted? Or we are planted, but where are we planted? So let's look at some of that. So he says that virtuous people do what? They stand. They stand. They stand for something. A virtuous tree, it stands. There's a lot of things going on around us. And we had to ask ourselves, are we standing? Or as Apostle Paul said, we had to ask ourselves, are we being just tossed to and fro with the wind of men? We lean whichever way seems to be the most comfortable. Which way is the world going? And we kind of lean to this side. And then they change and we lean to that side. But he says a virtuous people stand. Which means that you know there's no doubt. Now, you have to ask yourself, do the people around you know what you stand for? Well, y'all just looking at me like this. This is supposed to be a conversation, y'all. Come on now. So in fact, I was hoping somebody talked about this. In the recent storms we had in our area, we've seen hundreds of trees that are down. Some full trees that have been blown over. Now, have you noticed anything unique about them? About those trees? Trees living, it ain't dead. Huge trees, big trees, and they fall over. Say it again, but you got to talk loud, brother. The what are shallow? The roots. When you look at them trees, you see they break up all this land. They got some come up, the dirt comes up way high because the whole thing that fell over. And then they got a little root on them like that. They don't have anything to hold them. Which leads us to another question. What's holding us here?
The tree was grounded as we should be grounded. We're to be grounded to the solid rock, and if we're grounded to the solid rock, we don't waver or lean or tilt to either way. We stand upright because we're grounded, and our roots are tangled on the solid rock.
Okay.
So without solidarity in the grounding, you cannot stand.
So we got to get some deeper roots. We need some deeper roots. But let's look at this, what he says a little bit further. He says now, they live life that matters. And he didn't say that they wouldn't have to deal with any storms. It says storms are going to come. But because they've been planted and they have deep roots, they don't fall. And so we as Christians sometimes, we haven't been rooted enough. We haven't been rooted enough. We haven't done anything. We don't have that staying power. And then he goes on to say that in order to, and he talks about that, he say, this song is a plea or a beg or an invitation to us to do what? Better by digging deeper and more solid and more productive walk. Now, those are some things that we have to look at. Vince talks a little bit about this, I think, either in the sermon or either I heard him talking about this when he talked about some assessments and digging some understanding, and when somebody gave him an assessment that was far different than the assessment that he had for himself. You see, because he did not, we don't want to take the critical look at ourselves. Now, I've told you before. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm very good at that. I'm very good at criticism. I specialize in criticizing. So I can take a critical look at everyone, at anyone, but at myself. You see, when it comes to me, I have a whole lot of, I got a lot of grace in there. I understand grace when it comes to me. I recognize mercy when it comes to me. But don't ask me to take a look at, well, you don't even have to ask me. I'm going to look. I'm going to make some assessments. I'm just begging for you to ask me, to give you an assessment. Because I've already took the critical look, right? And so this psalmist is saying that, and on a serious note, that we should do that to ourselves. It's telling us to take a look into the Word of God so we can do a self-assessment, a critical assessment as to where we stand. Not with Russell Road, not with me, not with the church, but with God. Are you taking an assessment of where you stand with God? Or you might you might come up to my expectations. You might meet my standards. But where do you stand with God? Is God okay with what you're putting out? Now again, when we say virtuous living, you see, we say that it was a high standard. I would suggest to you that God's standards is even higher than that. But what I want you to see is, when we look at folks, we give folks praises for a lot of things. I'm going to get in trouble with this. I got to say it to you. It's said, I don't know for a fact, I just saw it reported, that there was a young man who ran race. Vince talked about running the track. And when he ran the race, he was a middle of the pack runner. Could never get anywhere. But then this young man decided, or he started feeling like, he said, you know what, I feel like I'm a girl. And so because he feels like he's a girl, he was allowed to run with the female. He came in first place. And we gave him an award. Now I want you to know how our standards change. Now, regardless of how you feel about that, I'm not trying to get, but I just want you to see how our standards change. Because there was a time that was unheard of. But our standards change. Now, the question is, did God's standards change? And so where are you going to stand? Throw it in there, brother.
Now we also, everybody that runs a race now gets something. And so we equate that when it comes to God, that since I did something and since I participated, I deserve something. I deserve an award because I showed up. I ran the race. I didn't run it very well. I didn't practice or anything like that, but I did run a race. I did show up. I should get something.
And so, and that is so true. I really like that. I appreciate you pointing it out, because that goes to what we just talked about up there, what the summons is asking us about, being deeper, more solid, and then here's the part we all struggle with, more productive. Being more productive. That baby got his hand up. What you want, baby? All right, okay. That baby had his hand up. I like that. You raise your hand, baby, because they won't raise theirs. So you raise your hand on that. Give me some help in here. I need some help. So the summons begin by giving us several warnings that can stand in the way of us meditating on God's word and thus living virtuously as a result. So the first thing he tells us, be careful where you walk. Be careful where you walk. Notice it says, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked. This is certainly not the only passage that admonishes us to avoid evil influences. Paul told the church at Corinth, bad company corrupts good morals. 1 Corinthians 15 and 33. And so we know that, right? Bad company, right? In fact, our foreparents used to tell us that all the time. Birds of a feather flock together, right? Don't be around them. But you know something? And I got to tell y'all, I always tell y'all some stories. I got to tell y'all a quick story here. I remember going out to the job when I first hired on this work code. And I got my first little promotion, and I went out to this service center, and the supervisor brought me outside. And he brought me outside, and he pointed over there, and he said, you see those guys right there? You see that one guy right there? He said, you want to avoid him. That's what he told me. You want to avoid him. He's not a good employee. What did I do? That's the first person I went to. I had to hang out with that person. And I say that because oftentimes that's what we do as Christians. We identify places we shouldn't go, people we shouldn't be with, all those things, and that's the very thing we what? Come on, y'all. That's the walk we have, right? We walk. That's what we walk. In fact, if we're honest with ourselves, and if we're honest, in a lot of ways, we're more comfortable walking with some of them than we are with each other. Why are we comfortable walking with them? They don't judge us. They judge us. But the thing about it is, they'll let us be ourselves. Now you're hitting it, girl. They're judging it on their standards, right? And their standards say, if you don't bother me, I don't bother you. I don't talk about your faults. You don't talk about my faults, right? And we're comfortable. And in fact, we'll lift each other up in our problems. We're more understanding. We're more considerate. We'll do for one another. Think about it. I'm going to throw something in that really it may just be me. But I'm going to throw something in that might get me in a whole lot of trouble. But I don't know. But I'm thinking in my mind, there are some people on the outside, as we like to say, that have invited me and paid for my lunch. More than my brothers and sisters. Girl, come on, let's go get something to eat. It's on me. But y'all getting quiet? Okay, I'm gonna stop. We'll move on. I don't like when y'all get quiet. Y'all make me nervous. I told y'all what about the quiet time, right? Y'all know my story about the quiet stuff? The only time I find it quiet. Okay, sister. Huh? But when you're blessed, let me go back to this. But when you're blessed, when you're by the river, I ain't worried about it could be my last, but I'm blessed. And I know the river is going to furnish me more. I'm not worried about it. It's going to always, you know what, I don't know where, but it's going to always show up when you're blessed. And so I don't worry about it because I'm blessed. But when you're not blessed, you're worried about it, and you don't know where the next, I can't run it, I can't take a chance. Maybe a better phrase for adults is compromise of convictions. This is the slow process that allows evil to work its way into our lives. It is often happens so subtly that we hardly realize it's taking place. We make an unwise decision. And so the author goes on and he refers to, I like the word, and I've heard it said around here many times, we call it rationalism. We can rationalize just about anything. And we do it. It's not a big thing. It's not a huge thing. It's just a little bitty thing, and it's no big deal. And I don't realize that it's pulling me this way. I like how the author said, you remember we talked about, we all know the way, and we all know we're supposed to be walking in the way, but because we put our blinders on, these little things continue to what? Have us drift off the path. Until we don't even notice it. You ever been on a highway, and everything says you're going north? You look up at your instrument on the dash, and it says you're headed north, and you stay on this highway, and pretty soon the highway goes to turning. But you're on the highway to go to north, but then the highway, next thing you know, is going northeast. Pretty soon it might be going east, right? But you headed where you're going to is no, but the road has changed. And if you're not watching, you don't even notice it. You don't even notice it. And that's the way it is in our lives. We get into little things, we get into little habits, and we start doing things to where we don't even notice that it's making a change. In fact, some of us, when we obey the gospel of Christ, we were some of the most energetic, some of the most happiest people you ever seen, the most excited about Christ, couldn't wait to tell people, and pretty soon, little after little, somehow or another the word seems to start escaping you. The opportunities seem to be far and few in between. And then pretty soon you notice you're not saying anything to anybody till you get here at Bible class. And then you take it out on the Bible school teacher. He also tells us that we have to be careful where we stand. See, we have to be careful as to where we stand. He tells us, again, nor stand in the path of sinners. He calls it spiritual desensitization. Begins by simply walking in the counsel of the ungodly. Somebody tell me who the counsel of the ungodly is. We read it, but who is that? Huh? I heard the world. Satan. Y'all don't know who the ungodly is? Gary? You're going to say Gary hit the nail on the head. Anybody, and I think I heard it over here. Anybody, right, that are not rooted and grounded in the Word of God is being considered what? The ungodly. So if Brother Brown is telling you something this morning, and you find it's not rooted and grounded in the Word of God, it's not good counsel. So there's a value in us, brothers and sisters, going back to what we used to be, to where when somebody says something, we say, give me Bible for that. Give me Bible for that. You know, we used to ask that. And then some of us used to come to church, and we have our books and our notebooks, and we make notes, and we write. Now, we're going to be in trouble because now you don't have to have your notebook. You should still have it, but as Vince says, it's being taped, so you can go back and look at it again. So we have no reason for not what? Meditating on it, studying it. Let me move on. I ain't going to run out of time in a minute. He says, then before long, we find ourselves standing with sinners, not being bothered by their actions at all. Ephesians 4:17-19 describes the process of spiritual desensitization as being darkened in their understanding, excluded from the life of God because of their ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their ears, and they, having become callous, having given themselves over to sensuality for the practice of every kind of impurity with greediness. To avoid the process of spiritual desensitization, we must be careful where we stand. Desensitized. Things that used to bother us no longer bother us. Huh? We used to see stuff that we just didn't sit right with us. And if we would see stuff that didn't sit right with us, we had to say something. But now we just got to where we don't. You know, I remember, some of you remember, you're old enough to remember this. And I was a little young boy when I saw the movie. It was called Gone with the Wind. And the man said a profane, not what we would consider in anything today is a huge profane word, but he said a four-letter word. And that's because he said the four-letter word for a long time, that wasn't even permitted on television. And finally, they put it on television. And then they started saying other four-letter words on television. But then they would kind of bleep them out. Then they kind of started giving you the acronym for them. They didn't bleep them out, they just give you the acronyms. And then because they have the ability that they can time delay this stuff, Kevin, that they would time delay to make sure what you said was permitted, right? But now they just say it. They just say it. Say it out, say it, and guess what? They say it so good, so when we heard it so much, we don't even hear it. Somebody had to bring it to us. Did you hear what they did? Well, what did they say? I didn't hear it. Oh, I hear it all the time. They ain't nothing. The kids, no matter what age now, used to be, there was things that our children, they couldn't see, couldn't hear to a certain time. Men wouldn't have certain conversations around women or around Christians, especially if it was a preacher or a minister or something. What happened?
Even if it's conscious or unconscious, our standards have changed, like you just talked about. Not rooted in the right way.
We've been desensitized to all these things. We've been led down a path of now any and everything is acceptable. And of good number. It just, if it, we say, oh, that's just them. When did this happen? It didn't happen all at once. If we go back and look at these things that we're talking about now, and we can see what he's talking about here, because over time, all these things have changed. Things that we would not in any terms, it was, I'm sorry, but I get all excited, but I remember again, not one too long ago, that we had a police chief that got in the city of Shreveport, got drunk, and went into the women's bathroom, and we ran him out of town for going into the women's bathroom. And now, we got to run out of time. Let me get on. I apologize. He says also we need to be careful where we sit. He says, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. Do you see the progression the psalmist uses from walking to standing to sitting? And so he suggests that that's what happens. We just first start off walking, and before we know, we find ourselves standing, and now you see a person, especially a Christian, doesn't usually jump right into the middle of sin. It is unusually goes in stages. He starts out by walking along with the wicked. Pretty soon he finds himself standing in the midst. And then not long before, he is sitting down with them. Somebody say, give me a Bible. Y'all remember when they took Christ and they was getting ready to stone him? Peter again, who initially said that he would die before he denied. He found himself, what? Walking with them. Pretty soon he was standing in the midst of them. And then they went to eat and he was sitting down with them. That's how it happens. And that's how it happened with us. And that's why we have to be on guard. Gary? Exactly. And that's what happens. That's what we have plenty Bible to show us how we walk down this path, how we get to where we are. Where pretty soon, not only does God not recognize us, but if we're honest with ourselves, we can't even recognize. In fact, we don't even today, in today's environment, I would suggest to you, if we are really, really honest with ourselves, that we will have a difficult time identifying, I shouldn't say it that way, but we would have some trouble identifying a Christian. Just because we have changed the standards what a Christian is. And see, and what and see, here's the interesting part. If we really honest with ourselves, what makes this new way of doing things is that each and every individual sets their own standard. And get mad at you if you tell them they don't have a. And I got to add one more to it as I get ready to take my seat. Is that to help us with doing this, we're even changing now the meaning of words. What words used to mean don't mean the same thing. And so go back as I take my seat, and let's go back to the beginning of what we talked about. Just imagine. Imagine if you were a child of God. What would that be like? Is there anything that God can't do? Is there anything that God doesn't have? Is there anything that you need he would keep from you? And so now, if you imagine yourself as a child of God, then you all imagine yourself being planted by that river, knowing that it's going to what? Be flowing. And notice here, the author leaves us with this. He said, don't miss this point. Christians choose where to plant themselves. If you plant yourself in a spiritual desert, you will be like chaff when the wind drives, which the wind drives away. Yet, if we choose to plant ourselves by the streams of the living river or living water, we will yield our fruit in its season, and our life will not wither. And in whatever we do, we will prosper. Psalms 1 and 3. When we choose to live virtuously, only then can we truly live a life that matters. And I will just add this as I take my seat. I often ask myself when it comes to Christ, what fruit am I bearing? What fruit am I bearing? Because I remember there was a time that Jesus came and he saw a fig tree and it had leaves on it. And if you know anything about a fig tree, when it got leaves on it, that's an indication from afar off. You see, some things show things. It shows that it has figs on it. But when he got there were no figs. And he cursed that tree because he said it had nothing but leaves. We need to ask ourselves today, are we like that fig tree? We have a show of being Christians, but we don't have any fruit. Brother God.